Good afternoon all. Welcome to this afternoon's session on workforce governance for registration categories 1, 2, 3. And I'd like to thank you for joining this afternoon's session. I'm Christian Hess, the Executive Director of the Risk Intake and Inspectorate at the Commission. You'll have noticed that today's sessions have been structured based on your provider category. As those delivering services in categories 1 to 3, your governance challenges often vary greatly from those in categories 4 to 6. It's also a practical session that invites you all to share your questions that will inform our discussion. To ask a question for this session, please submit it via the conference app or make your way to the aisle to use one of the mics when we get to that part of the session. For the benefit of everyone, please state your name and your organisation. To help me answer all your wonderful questions, I'm fortunate to be joined by a fantastic panel of leaders with extensive experience in aged care, each bringing in a unique perspective on what governance looks like for them. I'd first like to introduce Mel Ottaway, and she is the Executive Manager of the Community Services Retirement Living at Resthaven, a proudly South Australian not-for-profit aged care provider established in 1935. With more than 20 years of senior leadership experience in health and aged care, Mel brings extensive expertise in operations management, service delivery and strategic planning. She's also held a range of board roles, including serving on the local health network board since 2019, demonstrating her commitment to healthcare governance and community wellbeing. Mel is a registered nurse who holds a master's degree in both nursing and business administration and is a passionate advocate for improving services for older people. Under her leadership, Resthaven supports 14,000 older people and their carers to remain living in their homes across South Australia each year. And now I'd like to introduce Jasmine Higlet. Jasmine is the Client and Community Engagement Manager at St John's Ambulance Queensland, where she has spent over a decade leading programs that connect vulnerable Queenslanders to vital community services with experience spanning aged care, community transport and health promotion. Jasmine is passionate about improving social outcomes through inclusive and accessible support, and her background includes roles with Queensland Health and Women's Health Queensland-wide, underpinned by a strong commitment in equity, wellbeing and community empowerment. So today they're going to share their experiences, insights on what good workforce governance looks like, how it translates into practice, examples of effective approaches that empower workers to deliver their best quality of care and services for older people, and ways providers can strengthen and improve their own workforce governance processes. But before moving to the panel, I'd like to start with a short reflection on workforce governance before moving straight into questions to the audience. And I've been trying to fool myself that I can read my notes without my glasses, so I'm going to put my glasses on now. I'll give in to it. So what do we mean by workforce governance, and why is good workforce governance important? Workforce governance is the systems, processes and procedures of a provider that guides the management of its aged care workforce to deliver safe and high quality care. Workforce governance includes processes to manage and plan for its current and future aged workforce needs, ensuring workers are suitably skilled, competent, qualified, experienced, supervised, and trained to provide quality care and services. It includes processes to recruit, screen, engage, and supervise any workers engaged through an associated provider or a digital platform operator. Good workforce governance ensures older people accessing government-funded aged care have continuity of safe, high-quality and person-centred care in line with the Statement of Rights. It also ensures registered aged care providers deliver care and support its workforce in a way that aligns with the Statement of Principles. It ensures that risks associated with the workforce, such as competency gaps, shortages or vacancies, and regulatory responsibilities are identified, monitored and effectively managed by implementing mitigation strategies. It supports a diverse, trained and appropriately skilled workforce. It empowers members of the workforce to drive innovation and continuous improvement, including providing a platform for workers to raise issues and concerns and being responsive to them. It ensures the right people are making decisions with consideration of all relevant information. It minimises risks associated with in-home and community care settings, as the lack of direct oversight can create an environment where there is a greater potential for abuse and neglect, especially if the older person is vulnerable or unable to advocate for themselves. It provides a framework to ensure that adequate oversight of the workforce in varying business models such as franchises and self-management. It provides transparency and fosters an organisational culture that puts older people's rights at the front and centre. It provides accountability and ensures that regulatory obligations of the governing body, provider and workforce are met. From our perspective as a regulator, effective workforce governance should instil confidence in us that good care and services are being provided, especially when that care is being provided by an associated provider. And that's the case for many providers delivering services in categories 1 to 3. The workforce is often dispersed or externally subcontracted, and services can be episodic. Naturally, this results in challenges with visibility, supervision and oversight. And that's why workforce governance matters even more in these categories. The more dispersed the workforce, the stronger the assurance needs to be. Workforce governance isn't about preparing for what might go wrong. It's about knowing that you've got the systems in place to support your team to do the right thing. That's enough for me though. I will now move on to the hot seat and have a chat to my panellists. Conscious I can't see everyone, so apologies for that. I'd like to begin by just some group questions for my panellists today. And I would ask Jasmine firstly to reflect on what are the opportunities for the sector to improve workforce governance and outcomes for older people?
All right, so from my perspective, so I'm with St John Ambulance Queensland, so while we're part of a larger international organisation, each state does operate a little differently. And in Queensland, we only provide CHSP services in transport and social support. So quite small compared to some of the other providers. So opportunities that we see is to look at workforce planning and development. So focusing on attraction, retention, recruitment, and performance management, and make that part of your organisation strategic planning. Embrace technology and data, and actually use the data to inform your decisions, and really invest in your workforce training and capability development. And we've also got a real focus on strengthening our leadership roles as well. Another one obviously is education, career pathways and collaboration. So we are quite lucky with St John that we do have quite a lot of volunteers. So we do use that as an opportunity to promote aged care to those volunteers. And we are also able to kind of connect in with the local TAFEs and the universities as well to promote aged care as a really good career choice.
Great, thank you. Mel, would you like to reflect on that?
Yeah, well, Rest Haven's a fairly large organisation, and we've probably done some similar things from the perspective, we've really looked at our workforce and considered, what is the important components we need for them to have, and how does it translate into delivery of services, and making sure that we've got really good connection between that workforce piece and the delivery of direct services.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Mel, I'll get you to answer the next one as well, please. Now, what do you think are the opportunities for the sector to improve workforce governance? I've already asked that question. I'll ask the next one, because I already know the answer to that. How do we, the government and providers, support the aged care workforce to understand and deliver rights-based care?
I think the thing that we've done is really being open and transparent with our workforce, making sure that we've been clear in regards to the expectations, working with them right from the start in regards to developing a really good gap analysis in regards to having a look at our workforce around, what are the skills and the knowledge that they've got, and then making sure that we've been able to translate a decent education program based on the gaps that we've identified. being open and transparent that we haven't necessarily had all the answers, and talking to them about situations, working through case studies in regards to trying to build on each other's learning in regards to, we've got a variety of different skill levels, different experiences, so really trying to promote the conversation within the organisation.
Brilliant, thank you. Jasmine?
Yep, so I was going to say that we've been doing a lot of education around the actual Aged Care Act. This is the first time that as a CHSP provider that we are legislated under the Act. So we've been doing a lot of education about, well, what is the Aged Care Act? And as to our workforce, why is it important that you know about the Aged Care Act? I have the Act printed and I like to refer to it, and I know that the staff probably think that's really boring, but then in training we're trying to use some real practical examples of then how does it apply to you, what does the statement of rights look like, particularly within their role, using really plain language, making it really role specific, and providing the training in a variety of ways, so online, in person. If someone wants to do a role play, I'm all for that as well. It just depends on how the employee learns, and it's getting to know how they learn best.
Brilliant, thank you. I want to reflect on a question that came in the previous session from one of the providers who was talking about, and this is a question without notice, so my apologies, about this looking or seeking further supports, particularly in the CHSP space where you're becoming kind of regulated in a different way from 1 November. Is there kind of any external guidance other than just the wonderful Act as some bedtime reading? Is there other external guidance that you found either on the Department of Health's website or the Commission website which you have found particularly helpful, or other websites?
I've actually found, we're a member of Ageing Australia, so they've had some really good resources. And COTA Queensland, they have a CHSP engagement hub, and they have a lot of free webinars that we've pretty much signed up to all of them. They have some great resources. They always are happy to answer any questions that anyone has. We've also linked in with other service providers. As part of St John, we also have the opportunity to contact our state counterparts, like South Australia, and ask them what they're doing and share our resources. So my advice would be collaborate, look online. There's lots of low cost or free resources out there that you can use. Talk to other service providers, join the networking meetings, and just learn.
Amazing, thank you. Mel?
Look, I think similar to some of the things that were raised this morning is there's some wealth of knowledge with other organisations. So reaching out and asking the questions has really been useful to us. Having the conversations in regards to some of the sector development resources as well. Being open and transparent in regards to the things that you don't know, because chances are if you don't know, someone else doesn't know, and working together to try and brainstorm. For us, the information on the Commission's website has been really useful. Some of the case studies and examples and things have been really helpful.
I did not pay Mel to say that. I just want to say that.
But and look, I think probably the thing from our perspective is checking it regularly. There is lots of information that's added on a regular basis, so just going back to it and continuing checking in.
Brilliant, excellent. I'll give a plug for our sector readiness plan, which is on our website. It's actually just recently been updated. Up to now, it's kind of been a calendar view, so you can get an understanding of what's been released each month and also what we're planning to release between now and 1 November and further past that. We've also just recently adjusted it to be thematic as well. So you'll find a new version of it which kind of groups all of those support documents underneath particular themes, and that'll help you more easily identify those areas where you need some more assistance and guidance and information in that space. I'd just like to provide a reminder that you can submit your questions to our panel either via the conference app, and there's already a couple in there which I'll chat to in a second, or we also have the mics there as well if you'd like to go up to it. Mel, I might ask you a question. It relates to code of conduct, which is obviously one of the significant obligations of the Act. How do you ensure your workforce complies with the code of conduct? And how do you ensure, and how have you done it in your organisation? And have there been any kind of challenges and successes or difficulties in terms of promulgating that?
Sure. Look, we've taken sort of a fairly proactive, layered approach in regards to making sure all staff understand and comply with the code of conduct. Our focus has been really clear in regards to making sure that we've got clear expectations around the code of conduct, making sure that it's really visible, making sure we provide regular training, making sure that our leaders within the organisation have got a really good understanding of it, and making sure that it's embedded into our organisational practice. So it's included in things like our employment contracts, our induction programs, our ongoing training material. So it's always front and centre. In regards to our leadership and probably looking at it from a cultural perspective, we really make sure that our managers and leaders understand all of the principles of the code and enforce it in regards to at team meetings, provide again case studies in regards to application, and making sure that it's brought to life. So it's really clear in regards to all levels within the organisation. And then we've put in a number of strategies around sort of monitoring and making sure that there is accountability around the code. So we make sure we obviously track our training around making sure that our staff undertake refreshers around the code, and then making sure we also manage any breaches of the code as well, and make sure that things like our incident management process also pick up things like that. Look, it is a challenge to make sure that it is ongoing and living within the organisation, and I guess from our perspective it's constantly reinforcing it and reminding people. Using some really simple strategies like having it on the back of toilet doors and things like that, just make sure that it is constantly front and centre.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Jasmine, a question we received prior to the conference was around recruiting and retaining staff. It was recognised that many staff come to aged care with minimal experience, but we have high expectations of them. What help can providers get to support workers in a meaningful way?
So we obviously recognise that people do have minimal experience. And when we hire staff to come work for St John, we get a lot of people coming because they recognise the name, the reputation, and they don't necessarily have the experience within aged care. And we don't necessarily mind that. What we're looking for is that the person's got the right culture, the values, the attitude, that they'll fit into our organisational culture. And the way that we do that is behaviour profiling questions. We have made use, it's called DISC profiles, to understand what the worker is like, what their strengths are and how they would fit within the team. So then once we know that we've found the right person, then we can develop an onboarding process and training plan to make sure that they've got the skills, and making sure that they know exactly what their role is, what they need to do, having a really clear performance management framework in place with clearly defined goals. So for example, we have a strategic plan that links to organisational goals, team goals, and then right down to individual goals. And what we can do, you can see exactly as an individual how your individual goal relates to the strategic plan. And we make sure that with aged care at the moment, that all of these goals, we're relating it back to these client outcomes as well within the Rights-Based Act. And another thing that we do is, so we're providing these entry-level roles, but people want to know that if there's opportunity for career progression, so give them those opportunities. And if there's something that they want to work towards, we'll let them know that. So for an example, we have a lot of drivers that are on the road, and some of them wanted to learn more about our scheduling and dispatch. So we gave them an opportunity to do that. So it's keeping them engaged within the workforce developing a culture where they want to continue to learn, and this continuous improvement is another one.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Mel, we heard prior to the conference that attendees were very aware of the changes in the new Rights-Based Act and that additional training and support will be needed across organisations to support workers' understanding of these changes. And this is going to require sustained effort, which you've already spoken about a little bit in terms of the Code of Conduct. What are you doing now to prepare to meet your workforce obligations from 1 November? And what educational and monitoring frameworks do you have in place to support all staff?
Look, we undertook a gap analysis in regards to the new standards, particularly really focusing on obviously standard 1, the person, and standard 2, the organisation. So really having a look at our workforce planning, HR, and pulling together a really targeted action plan in regards to the areas that we needed to focus on. We've done a review in regards to our policies and procedures and the alignment that we need to have in that space, and obviously looking at our relevant HR procedures, our clinical governance processes, operational policies, and making sure that they're aligned in regards to the requirements of the workforce. We've done some reviews in regards to our existing workforce and had a look at our staffing levels and the skill mix around their responsibilities and the things that they're currently doing, and really started to try and pull together some frameworks based on the standards in regards to the capacity and capability that we need our staff to have around their roles, looking at the training to support them. The other area that we've also looked at is the governance space and making sure that we're regularly updating our executive team and our board in regards to how we're tracking. Because if we don't have the right workforce and we don't have the right people, we're not able to be able to deliver the things that we need to do. So we've then undertaken a range of things around education, having a look at our workforce in regards to the new standards, having all our staff undertake training in regards to the standards, making sure that it's brought up on a regular basis at our staff meetings, and continuing to look at the fact, we're in a people industry, and if we don't have the right people and the right processes in place, it's going to fall over, and our workforce is absolutely central to that.
Brilliant, excellent. Thank you so much. Oh yes, question at the mic. Thank you.
Trisha Vanderpavard, Community Interlink. We provide a regional home care service basically from the outskirts of Melbourne right up to southern New South Wales. So I wanted to ask, do you broker services? Great. So how do you mitigate the risk of the brokered services and ensure that the cost is effective for consumers and for your business model into the future?
A great question, and it's probably one that has caused us the most challenge as an organisation, from the perspective that obviously employed staff, you've got more ability to be able to control and influence, I guess, in regards to the cultural piece. The subcontracted services is much more of a challenge. We've again undertaken a pretty systematic review in regards to all our subcontracted services, had a look at our contract and redeveloped a new contract for all our subcontracted service providers. We've also tried to reduce the level of them because we had over 500 individual. And I guess from a governance perspective, we really tried to look at it from how do we maintain choice, but also look after the quality and make sure we have good governance around our accountability for those services. We also have done some work, and we're still undertaking this at the moment, is having a look at the price point in regards to how much each of the subcontractors costs, and also pulled together a pretty comprehensive information pack as well to our subcontractors around information and expectations that we have of them, being able to provide services on behalf of us and what that looks like. The next piece that we're looking at is what is a reasonable audit program for us to consider for the subcontractors. And at the moment, we do audit our subcontractors, but we've realised we need to have a much more robust process in place in regards to how do we make sure that they're delivering a standard of service that we are expecting, and what does that look like? And that's still a piece we're working through at the moment.
Thank you. And cost effectiveness.
Cost-effective one is a really interesting one, and I think from the perspective that's something that we've been working with the subcontractors around setting a price guide. So some of them have put forward some pricing and it is too expensive for us. So we are in the process of having those conversations around saying, well, unfortunately, we probably will not be able to continue with that provider. So it's a tough one to navigate.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing, so thanks so much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Just checking there's no one else hiding any of the microphones and all the various spots. Thank you. Question for Jasmine. It goes a little bit to what Mel was talking about there and some of the risks and things like that we've spoken about in terms of category 1, 2, 3. How can we engage with a workforce that largely operates autonomously and outside of an office environment, with a large proportion of them maybe subcontracted or casual in their engagement?
Yes. So we make use of communication and connecting with our staff. So flexible communication tools, whether that's online, text, phone, emails, a variety of channels. So particularly with our staff, we've got a large team of drivers with very, very busy days. So the communication that we do get to them, it needs to be brief, relevant, well-timed. And we know that not all staff check their emails or messages every single day, so that can be a challenge as well. Another thing we do is our team leaders scheduled short, regular check-ins. So even like a 10-minute phone call, one-on-one phone call with them, just to check in with them, see how it's going. That can make all of the difference. We do a lot of recognition and culture building. So our general manager does weekly updates. We do shout outs and recognition through our HR apps. And then another thing, I suppose, with staff who you're not seeing them every day, is you worry about compliance issues, things like that. So obviously we get them off the road. We're doing some in-depth training with them, making sure that they understand things that way, monitoring any feedback and complaints that come through. We call it a notification form, and really embed this culture of openness, transparency, trust, where they feel they can contact any of the staff in the office at any time to report something, or if they've got any sorts of concerns, and they know that someone's going to answer them as well. So we've got a dispatch team. The staff have a dedicated number that they call. All of the feedback goes through there, and we go from there and create opportunities for in-person engagement. And it is a challenge then, because you're still trying to provide services to the clients, but you need to keep your staff engaged, and being able to see people in person makes all that difference for them to feel connected as well. So that is a challenge, and I think that just is part of the industry that we're in, that we just have to work through it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jasmine. Can I expand on that a little bit? And I want to think back on the conversation that we had earlier, particularly Anne Wunsch's discussion around SIRS reporting and things like that. And I would imagine, and Mel, I'll pull you in on this question as well, that for some workers, there may be a disincentive to notify you if they see a SIRS. They might think they might get in trouble or something along those lines. How do you kind of establish a strong reporting culture within your team? You spoke a little bit about that there. That lets them know that it is okay for them to report something that they see, which meets that SIRS definition.
Yeah, so we have a form. We call it a notification form. So we don't necessarily use the scary terminology of complaints. We find people don't like the word complaint, so we call it notifications. And it's about feedback, whether it's good feedback or bad feedback. And we do with a lot of training with the drivers about all the different types of feedback, including we'll slide SIRS in there because some people are like, oh my gosh, that means that something awful's happened. So it's just continually reminding, having conversations with staff that it's okay to report feedback, that it's not scary. And yes, sometimes the feedback does require a SIRS report, but it's, yeah, I feel like we are in a fairly good place where our drivers have no issue with putting through notifications. They know at the end of the day that providing feedback and putting through these notifications, it's in the best interests of the clients. That's why we're here at the end of the day. So people need to put their egos aside and look after the clients.
Brilliant, thank you. Mel, any reflections?
I think we've probably made sure that it's been really clear when we've onboarded staff, made sure that in induction that they really understand the process. One of the things that we've found is obviously in regards to an allegation is made and it needs to be reported, it can be pretty confronting for a staff member when they hear that they've been reported in regards to an allegation of a theft. We try and make sure that obviously maintaining confidentiality, but we do close the loop from the perspective that sharing examples with staff around issues where an allegation has been made, and often something will turn up 2 or 3 weeks later. It's just been put in a wrong drawer. So we'll have someone who's made an allegation, it's been reported, it's gone through the process, but again, being transparent with the workforce around it is actually okay if things are raised, that they're not necessarily proven, and we do need to make sure that we encourage them to do so.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you very much. And while you're on a hot streak, Mel, I'll ask you another question. In your view, what role should the governing body or board play in workforce governance? What should they be focusing on, asking, contributing to ensure good workforce governance? And what can governing bodies do to ensure all staff members, including subcontractors and casualised workforce, comply with the organisation's regulatory requirements or code of conduct? You've already covered the code of conduct, Big, but I'm really interested in kind of your thoughts about how you engage with the board and make them a part of that.
The board is key from the perspective that the board obviously has heightened responsibility in regards to the governance piece. So being really transparent and open with a board is important. Having them understand the challenges that occur within services, giving them specific examples in regards to situations that arise, and working with a board in regards to providing education. Boards come from a variety of different backgrounds, board members, and some of them have an amazing knowledge base and some of them have a completely different skill set. So trying to ensure that the board has all of the information to be able to ask the questions so they feel comfortable in regards to the services that are being provided. So again, looking at the information that's going up to the board and asking the questions around, you know, what's it telling them? What are the things that the information is being provided? But then looking at it from a board perspective and saying, well, what are the types of questions that they potentially will ask as a result of this? and trying to fill in those gaps.
Brilliant. Awesome. Thank you so much. Another question for you, Jasmine. Have you seen any innovative models or practices in workforce governance that others could learn from?
Yes, so there's one that we are looking to adopt in the near future, and it's called Kaizen, sorry. And it's a Japanese philosophy that's centred on continuous improvement in all aspects of an organisation. So what we're hoping to do is to really raise that culture of continuous improvement where staff are always actively encouraged to contribute ideas for better service delivery and internal processes. So Kaizen it's in Toyota, were about efficiencies. In terms of aged care, we are wanting to look at to see, well, how can we apply that for better quality outcomes for consumers? How can we get staff to be constantly thinking about, is there a better way? And even better, if we could get our clients involved in that too, if they could be coming to us and saying, I have got an idea, this is how you can make care better for me. I think it's a very interesting concept that we would love to work towards.
Brilliant. Excellent. I've seen that in a range of different functions, and yeah, that's a very interesting one to have a look at. I'm just going to go to some of the questions from the live Q&A, but I'll check there's no one at the mics first. We're all clear. Very good. Excellent question, this one. 2/3 of people living with dementia in the community. How are you making sure your staff have solid dementia-specific education, given this isn't specifically outlined for providers on how to train staff?
We have staff who are trained as dementia friends, who then train the other staff to be dementia friends. It's through Dementia Australia, a really good training to look into. Highly recommend.
Brilliant, awesome. Mel, any?
We again run a range of comprehensive training programs for staff in regards to things like dementia, but also reach out to other organisations like Dementia Australia and tap into some of their resources because they're amazing in regards to some of the programs that they can provide.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Can you please give an example or two regarding behaviour profiling questions for prospective staff?
Use the DISC profile. So you can search it online and it's a series of questions. You can ask a potential applicant to fill it in and then you get what's called their DISC profile, which will give you an indication of their strengths. You can, so at St John, we've all done our DISC profile. All the managers have a copy of the staff DISC profile. So when you're onboarding a person into a team, you can see what kind of areas you would need people within. It also gives then staff an opportunity to go, okay, well, when I'm talking to this person, I know that they're of this certain profile, so I might need to change my messaging a bit more. Very helpful for team leaders as well when they're having conversations with staff about how they can tailor messages based on their DISC profile. So DISC, that's my plug.
Excellent, good tip. I think I've done that myself at one stage, applying for a job. I'm not going to say if I passed or failed though. Mel?
Giving scenario-based questions in regards to recruitment, so giving examples around real-life scenarios and reaching out to see how people respond to them is a really useful way.
It's an excellent idea. The new Act is supposed to be rights-based, but it's not clear what workforce governance has to do with supporting older people's rights. Can the panel please talk about how workforce governance links to rights and how providers can demonstrate this link?
I think making sure that your workforce planning links to client rights and client outcomes and then work backwards from there. So we know that if your staff are happy and engaged, you're going to have better outcomes for your clients. So that's how we've kind of thought about it in those ways. There's also gap analysis that you can do with the statement of rights that we've done. And you can identify if there's any places that's missing, whether that needs to be training, whether you need to make tweaks to policies and procedures, whether there's knowledge missing within the workforce and work through it that way.
Mel, any thoughts?
I think reminding people in regards to everyone's different and understanding people's differences is really important. Making sure that we don't necessarily push our own views on people, treating people with respect and kindness, keeping it simple, working with people and understanding from the perspective that the way that you want to be treated in regards to the way you want to live is your right, and having staff understand that is a really easy way.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mel. I think for my 2 cents, your workforce is how your clients perceive you, the way that they engage with them, the way that they put their needs first. They are your face within the community, and they're your face within your client bases. So having really good workforce governance to make sure you're hiring the right people, you're training them appropriately, the right skills and experience that they need to. You've got a great reporting culture to ensure that complaints and issues are resolved quickly. Is really it's fundamental to the statement of rights, and it's fundamental to a lot of the obligations that are listed there on the screen. We had a question on the list in regards to training volunteers. Jasmine, did you want to give a bit of a discussion about how you treat the volunteer component of your workforce? Do you treat them exactly, do they get all the same training as everyone else, or is it slightly different, or how do you guys manage that?
So with the training, we actually were looking at this not that long ago. So we're looking to see what the roles are. So we've got volunteers that are within aged care volunteer visitors scheme, and there's a specific guidance about what training they should receive. But within, for our CHSP services, our volunteers within that, we are rolling out very similar training that our staff are getting. At the end of the day, we believe that they're entitled to the same learning as what the paid workers are. Obviously, we're mindful that volunteers don't have all the time in the world. So we're trying to allow for time for that. But yeah, and we do have a system that our volunteers log into and do their e-learning. So it's trying to make it as easy as possible for our volunteers, but also recognising that this is a lot of new information for them. But at the end of the day, we believe that it's important for them, especially when we're looking at rights-based care.
Brilliant, thanks. Mel, do you guys have volunteers as well, and how do you deal with them?
We do, and we've had a review of our volunteers and had a look at their roles and responsibilities. So a little bit like Jasmine in regards to looking at the things that our volunteers are doing and trying to match our training to that. So having some core-based training for volunteers, and depending on what area they're supporting us with and what area they're going into, we will then adapt our training to that as well. But also with the view that they are volunteering for us, so trying to balance how much we want them to be able to undertake and how much they're willing is a bit of a balance.
Thank you. In terms of worker training as well, for categories 1 to 3, how do you do a training analysis of what the individual worker needs, and are there any resources that you utilise to determine kind of what their training needs are for the service that they're doing, or any qualifications and things like that to ensure that they are appropriately trained and qualified to do the work?
Yeah, so we've kind of done looking at position descriptions, exactly what the roles are of each of the workers in the various teams. And we've made use of, there's been a few training skills gap analysis out on the internet that you can access. Once again, we've related that to the Code of Conduct and the Statement of Rights, and the provider obligations to see then, well, what extra training do they need? It's kind of been a matter of making a big spreadsheet and just going through it one by one.
Brilliant. Mel?
We've looked at developing a capability framework based on roles and responsibility and mapping our training to that for our workforce.
Perfect, thank you. Just looking at some more questions. Some have disappeared from my list. Some associated providers are resisting meeting the expected compliance requirements. Can we clarify how home care providers can manage this and meet guidelines? So have you had instances where you've had associated providers or subcontractors refuse to meet those compliance requirements, and kind of how do you engage in that?
That's part of the process that we're undergoing at the moment as I said earlier, we've sent out a whole lot of information to our contracted services in regards to if we're getting some pushback, we're organising to meet with them and run them through to really try and understand what are the challenges. Obviously, from the perspective, we see it from a provider perspective, but we don't necessarily see it through their lens. Generally, the challenge has been from a contractor perspective is around resourcing, and with the view that they may have very little input into aged care, so they may end up having one or two clients. So it's about them making that decision around whether they want to continue or whether it is too much of an investment for them. So it is still a process we're going through at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you. Jasmine?
Yeah, I was just going to say, agree with Mel. It is definitely a challenge, and we too are having to review, look at contracts, MOUs, and once again, aged care might not be their core business. But for us as a provider, it's important that they meet certain obligations. So it's sitting down with them and having those conversations.
Brilliant. And this is a somewhat related question. So how do providers balance client choice and compliance underneath support at home? Example A, a consumer wants to fund a third-party cleaner, but the cleaner does not want to sign a brokerage agreement and provide a police check. Have you encountered that situation, and how do you think you'd manage it?
Interesting question. We haven't encountered that in regards to someone refusing around police checks. I think from our perspective, it's about being really open and transparent with our clients upfront around being clear around our responsibilities as a provider and making sure that they understand the governance requirements that we obviously need to meet and the regulations. We don't want to take away people's choice or rights, but they also have a right to not necessarily continue to have services with us. So it's trying to navigate through that tension between what is our responsibilities as a provider, how do we make sure that we meet those responsibilities, but also provide people with choices as well. And it's not an easy one. We obviously have the process around dignity of risk from that perspective as well. So trying to work out from an organisational perspective if we're comfortable to take that risk and what that looks like. But probably picking up on some of the points that were made earlier is that communication piece and keeping the communication lines open and being really clear and transparent in regards to potentially why decisions are being made or being looked at. So people might not necessarily agree, but at least if they can understand is the approach we would take.
Brilliant, great answer. Jasmine?
So we haven't really had that. Most of the time it's people saying we want to make sure we have your staff and not someone else. But yeah, like Mel said, it is that balance between, as a provider, we've got obligations because it's a government funded service, and if the other provider isn't willing to adhere to that, it put us in a bit of a hard place. And I suppose, yeah, it's having the conversations with the client and just explaining what that means.
Yeah, brilliant, excellent, great answer. And I think the kind of the key through that was something that, for me, that Mel referenced in terms of being really open and transparent with the client in terms of that engagement, really open in terms of what the obligations are on you as the registered provider, as the person with the responsibility in this space, to ensure that that safe and effective care is provided. Here's a question which will be interesting for you two guys to think about, probably with a different hat. So any tips for subcontractors trying to manage the hundreds of different contractual requirements from providers? So what kind of things do you guys put in place to maybe make that process a little easier for your subcontractors?
I think probably from our perspective is using as many of the resources that are available through the Commission and the department keeps it simple. Trying to make sure that we use fairly standardised processes because we work on the view that if we are doing it that way, hopefully others are. And so from a subcontracting perspective, it should be relatively similar.
Brilliant, excellent. Jasmine?
Yeah, I agree with using the resources from the department and the ALIS training as well, if that's something that they can access and do the training on there.
Another question in regards to subcontractors. How can subcontractors meet their own privacy requirements when providers are asking for confidential and private staff information?
I suppose with us, we've been on the other end where we provide brokerage transport services to current home care package providers, and they are, it was brought up in the previous session, they are asking for details of every single staff member, of criminal history checks, police checks, licence numbers, all of that. And we previously had been just signing a statutory declaration, and that is a challenge that we are coming up against now and are trying to somehow manage. What that looks like, we're not quite sure yet.
Thanks, Jasmine. Mel, do you have any comments on that one?
Pretty similar in regards to one of the things that we've looking at is whether we visit some of our contractors and have a physical look at the information but then don't hold it. So working through some of those different ideas.
Brilliant, thank you. A question, sorry. Oh, perfect, thank you, sorry.
Hello, I'm Rachel. I'm from Meals on Wheels, Queensland. We're a service provider as well as being a sector support and development provider within CHSP. So our big issue currently, and we're talking about, same processes across everybody. We've been having a lot of conversations with those who will be supported home providers around evidence of service delivery. And this is workforce. That's who we're asking to provide this evidence. So what are your opinions on what, for a meal service, the suggestion was take a photo. Like, what do we take a photo of? The client holding the meal? But then that whole process, because we're volunteer-based, is like, well, then they've all got to have a phone. They've all got to know how to take a photo on their phone. They've all got to do... So what do you guys see as that sort of continuity of a compliance action for our workforce?
Are they not allowed to write a note to say that it's been delivered?
We've had a lot of different supported home providers come back to us with different things. Somebody said, you list the date you made the delivery on the invoice. We're happy with that. To the point where people have given us monthly QR codes per client that need to be scanned to say we've made that delivery.
And that's quite a lot to ask for your volunteers. I don't have an answer for that. It's tough, especially if you've got different opinions on how it should be done. I can understand how that is quite tough.
We'd love a top-down evidence list.
Mel, do you have any thoughts?
That's something that we're looking at as an organisation at the moment, particularly from the subcontractor perspective and that evidence piece. We've explored the option of QR codes, but as you're saying, challenges with that one. We're looking at the option of, is there a way that we can have an app in regards to, but it is something we're still working on. The evidence is not easy.
Thank you.
I might ask one final question. This is anyone at the mic, and then I'll ask a bit of a wrap-up statement for you both. How do you register the subcontractors that you engage? Do you have kind of a particular system that you utilise? How do you kind of have visibility of all those? Mel?
We actually are using a system called Rapid Global to be able to register all our subcontractors through.
We only have one subcontractor, so that makes it quite easy for us.
Perfect, excellent. Thank you so much. Conscious that we're getting close to time and I don't want to stand between you and the buffet, but I was just hoping for both of my panellists to give kind of, if you could look at your colleagues out here all doing an amazing job in the sector, if you give them one takeaway from today and what you've heard throughout the conference, what would that be? Mel, can I start with you?
I think be kind to yourselves. It's a transformational change that we are going through and we're all undertaking it. Whether it's a big organisation or a small organisation, we all have different challenges. So keep talking to each other, keep working through it and keep going.
I was going to say collaborate. It's honestly been so helpful to talk to other service providers, not from just within Queensland, but from around Australia, because we're in it together. So let's learn from each other.
Brilliant, amazing. I just want to really sincerely thank Jasmine and Mel. There's been a really focus from the Commission throughout this conference to make sure that the information provided is practical and helps you go away and kind of implement things throughout your own providers to get ready for the new Aged Care Act. And I could not be more happier with how Jasmine and Mel have really provided some amazingly practical examples of how they're addressing the challenges of the new Aged Care Act and how they're implementing it within their provider. So can you please join me in thanking Jasmine and Mel? So now we'll break for lunch. Catering is again served buffet style in the main foyer, just outside where the normal morning tea is. We'll see you in the main plenary at 2:15 for our final session of the conference, which focuses on the practical strategies for getting ready for the new regulatory framework.